Hey guys, it's Eric with the Miller Park Minute, where we're throwing strikes and getting likes, hitting dingers and getting listeners. Back again with another podcast. Yes, this is your Brewers podcast home. If you haven't already, remember to subscribe on all the platforms. We are on Facebook Live, we are on Twitter Live. If you're checking us out for the first time, remember to subscribe to the Miller Park Minute. Um, a whole lot of nothing going on in the MLB right now. It's kind of that lull season right as the MLB playoffs are happening. But we, of course, are still tuning in. We're going to talk about the most recent signings. It's going to be a short-ish episode tonight, I guess. There's not a whole lot going on, so we're going to cover the signings, any other news. Obviously, we are still in the wake of Bob Uecker passing. It still hit me. I drove by the stadium today, and I saw um, all this stuff out front, and it's still very heartbreaking. I think we're all still there and still in the feels. So as more and more content pops up online, we're getting to walk through these emotions and feel this thing and realize he is really gone, unfortunately, and it's very hard. And we're gonna start off today with a what the chuck. So as you know, this is a new segment to the show we're gonna do. When there is content that is put out that is, how we say, just makes you go, what the fuck? We're going to go to what the chuck, because that person, that specific content creator, has a lot of moments, and we're going to highlight them. So today's what the chuck moment of the day. Um, and I'm not, I don't mean to disgrace someone who's doing a tribute episode. He was doing a tribute, and he made it all about, he made the comments and the things that people posted and the memories of Bob Uecker that people shared to him and his platform about himself. He didn't sympathize, he didn't empathize, he made it about him. And that's kind of what his podcast is about. It's about him. Now, this show is my opinions and it's about me, but I also try and incorporate other people's opinions. I try and bring on guests. I let them talk. I try and put out good information and good content, because this is what I would like as a fan, and I would expect that. On his show, though, it is about his feelings and his thoughts and how every memory related to him. And he picked some interesting stuff to say. Um, it really made me say, "What the chuck?" And yeah, we're gonna deep dive on some of these "What the chuck" moments more in the future. Right now, he hasn't prognosticated or flip flopped on anything, but we're also gonna call out his flip flops. So wait and see on that. That's where I tell you something and then we revisit it later. Stealing from my favorite podcaster. So big signings have happened here. Anthony Santander has gone to the Blue Jays. Yes, the Blue Jays finally got somebody. But the other one that happened is the Sasaki. And then this is meant in no kind of way, but the Dodgers got more Japanese. So I don't know how to pronounce it. Roki Sasaki was the big name that was coming over from Japan this year. He was posted. If you have free agent pool or international free agent pool money, you can spend that towards it. It's not like regular free agency where the guy could have signed for $300 million or, any kind of a crazy number like that. So we technically could have gotten him. That's where the Angels got Shohei Ohtani. It was international pool money. We, however, did not even seem to be in any of the mentions and any of the stories. I follow these things pretty closely because, of course, Japanese superstar would be a great thing. Back in the day, we had Hideo Nomo. We've also had Aoki and there's been players through the lines. But when you look at this as a whole, it comes to, okay, the Dodgers keep adding weapons. And the reason I'm talking about this is because there's a lot of people that say it's unfair. It's unfair that the Dodgers can sign all these players and do this. No. Unfortunately, it sucks because our owner is not going to sign these players. It doesn't sound like they even entertained the idea of getting into Sasaki. But why that sucks is because it's the owners. And there's this narrative in this story that wants to be painted. They want to paint that the Dodgers are the bad guy and the evil empire. And albeit they are in a way. I'm not saying they're not. Because they're doing it. Because they can do it. But I'm going to say that every team has those opportunities. And you may say, well, if the Dodgers have way more money, the Brewers could be making these types of moves as well. It is not totally out of the realm, especially with an international pool player. That's something that's international pool money. The Brewers have that. The Brewers tend to choose to farm down in the Dominican, though. They have a Dominican base, and they've had a lot of success with that. So I'm not gonna, Jesus made, Freddie Peralta. There's other players, Jackson, obviously, that have come along that are more based that way. Dodgers choose to go the international market of Japan. Now, in the case of Yamamoto, he was not an international pool player because he waited his full time. So if you take a look at this Sasaki player, for instance, Roki Sasaki, I think that's how it's said. If you take a look at him, for instance, he was signed while he was still like an arbitration player. He's still very young, 21, 22, something like that. He was signed in like the ARB years. So he'd be like a Jackson Churio, a Sal Frelick, he'd be one of those players. So that's where they got him at a better price. About 6 million, 7 million international money. So basically you have to have that money in your international pool. So we didn't enter that discussion. So that's not something that is out of the realm of our possibilities. So that's one we kind of missed the boat on. Similar to Shohei Ohtani. He went to the Angels. International pool money was spent. The Angels didn't spend a lot of money. They spent international pool money. And then when he became free agency, when he spent his time in the majors, that's when he signed the mega deal with the Dodgers. Little education for you on that, in case you didn't know. In case you didn't know, there is a potential for the Brewers to get guys like that. Now, we're not going to sign a $700 million player. You're not going to sign Shohei Ohtani. You're not going to sign Juan Soto. Let's get those out of our head. But there is the flexibility with and the Dodgers are kind of showing the path. And that's the thing I think that burns me the most is they're showing that these guys will take deferred money. A lot of deferred money. I mean, most of Shohei Ohtani's contract is deferred. Now, I don't know if that's for tax purposes because of the 13% tax rate in California. I'm not really sure. But they're showing that players will take deferrals because players want to also guarantee their future. They want the big money, but they want to guarantee their future. So where a lot of people are anti this is because they say, oh, the Brewers can never afford that. These small markets can never afford that. No, we can afford to spend money. I still think we could have spent $182 million to keep Willy Adames here. You can't change my mind that was not in the realm of possibilities. I mean, look how much we're paying Christian Yelich. They could afford a secondary contract like that. It would just, the margins would be a little different. And teams like the Brewers are not going to operate in that light, in those margins, because of the money isn't guaranteed in their eyes. They don't have, that's why they went essentially back to Bally. So in case you didn't know, FanDuel Sports Network is essentially Bally. It's just a rebranding, renaming. Still under the Diamond Sports Group, still under that whole mess. It's still a rights deal. We'll talk about that more in a future video. But the big thing here is they're not they're playing the poor card, and I'll go back to that graphic that I referenced earlier. It's amount of revenue versus spending. Revenue that the teams make, you could say, oh, they there's a guy famously on Facebook that always says that they've operated in the red for the last like 10 years, 7 years, or however long Mark Antonazio owns it. But the thing that keeps happening is they keep increasing in value. How does that happen? How are you increasing in value but operating in the red? That makes no sense, and business-wise, that does not compute. So let's get rid of that narrative. Let's get rid of the narratives that we are a poverty franchise. But we did make some moves. Albeit poverty moves, we made some moves, guys. So these happened over the last couple of days. I didn't talk about them because of the situation with the Euchre. And I just felt Euchre needed the time. I let it breathe a little bit on Euchre. I didn't jump right in and keep talking about it. So that being said, Bob Euchre, it's now been almost a week. Well, no, it's not. It's been a couple days, but it's breathed. It's breathed. It's still the story. As many of you know, I'm a big wrestling fan. They aired a little tribute to Bob on wrestling. I think just about everywhere in the realm, celebrities all over have talked about Bob. It's been a big deal. I saw something from Adam Sandler. I mean, I've seen something from just about everybody. If you really follow, if you go on X or if you go on any of social media, it's out there. So the Brewers did sign Jorge Alfaro. And again, I could be butchering that, but that's a catcher in agreement with a minor league deal with an invite to big league camp. The backstop is represented by CAA. He is 32 in June. Once a top 100 prospect, his power is considered his best trait. He occasionally showed flashes of tapping into during his big league career. He is largely undercut his lack of plate discipline and contact skills. To this point, he has appeared in 496 major league games, stepped to the plate 1,710 times. Only 4.2 of those, and it was with Alfar taking a walk. 34% were a strikeout. Both of those numbers are well worse than typical league average players. He had 48 home runs in there. He hit 253, 302, 393. Not good numbers. Not good numbers. But this is another one of those project players, a fringe player that we sign, that we hope we can do something with, and he comes out. I mean, he could essentially end up being cut or spend his season in the minors and just be a backup. Again, it's a catcher position, so I think Jefferson Caro is more than likely going to be the backup and see his major league debut this year, but we don't know that for certain, and we are just going to have to My Facebook Lives didn't start. That's funny. It's really delayed on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, I apologize. See where this goes. Obviously, you've got your top catcher, one of the top catchers in the game. So do you really need to worry about the backups? Contreras wants to play every day. Let's let him play every day. Especially since we aren't going to be locking him up for the long term. You know what I'm saying? Which just ain't gonna happen. Yeah, Caro had only one game in AAA. Uh, they're they're not going to start him too hard. Like I said, I think I predicted. I've cleaned up my office, so I don't know where the sheet is, but I think I said sometime this season. I don't think I said immediately this season, but they're not going to push him. He's only had one game in AAA. The next Brewer signing is Elvin Rodriguez. They designated JB Backus for assignment. The Brewers have signed a right-hander, Elvin Rodriguez, to a one-year deal with a club option for 2026. He looks to be so they designated JB Backus. He is 27 in March, pitched in the majors with the Tigers in 22 and 23. He logged 33 MLB frames. He'd been hit hard, surrendering a gruesome 9.55 ERA. The bulk of that work came as a starting pitcher. He worked out of the bullpen in 2024. In 45 innings from Japan, Yamamoto Swallows, it's Japanese names, Rodriguez logged a tiny 1.8 ERA with 24% strikeout rate, 6.5% walk rate. He spent nearly as much time with the Swallows minor league club early in 24 season. He did with the big league club later in the year, pitched a similar 1.67 with their farm system. So he could definitely be a factor as like one of those guys that we bring in that may need that pitching lab experience, and we bring him in, and he eats some innings in the back end of the games. It looks like our starting rotation looks pretty set, if you ask me. I mean, you look at Freddie Peralta, Nestor Cortez, Aaron Savali, Tobias Myers, returning Brandon Woodruff. You've got Aaron Ashby and DL Hall. Plenty of starting rotation moves there. Now, I brought up the Dodgers early in this because I wanted to compare. A lot of people are like, well, the Dodgers are just rich with pitching, right? Well, the reason they have so many starters, they signed all these guys, is because we know what happens with starting pitching because we've watched it happen to the Brewers year in and year out. The Brewers are pretty deep in the starting rotation. Not as deep as the Dodgers, but the Brewers are very deep in that position. So, I think that's important to notice. This game has now changed where you're getting guys to go 5 or 6 innings, and that's kind of the tops for a starter. Unless it changes and goes back the other way around, that's what we're going to see going forward. So I think that's important to note across the board. We're going to go back to Bob Uecker for a second. I mentioned Santander already signed. I'm just seeing if there's any other big signings across the board that we missed. I don't think I missed anything. I really don't. I have a running conversation with the butcher where we just go back and forth and say who went to where. There's still big free agents out there. There's Bregman's still on there. there's still room. I mean, we're in that end of January period where we got Christian Yelich and Lorenzo Cain in the same breath, basically. So I don't want to totally rule that out of the realm of possibilities that something like that could still happen for the Crew. And if you haven't already, guys, go check out the tribute to Euchre down at the stadium. Some of the beers are starting to pop, though, because of the extreme cold that we are experiencing here in Wisconsin. So there's exploded beers everywhere in front of the Euchre statue. So it kind of looks a little worse for wear than it did a few days ago after it happened. So, but it's still a fitting tribute nonetheless. Let's talk about I want to talk about the story of Yuke's final game. This is information posted by Adam McCalvey. Sorry. Jeff Levering, the Swiss Army knife of the Brewers broadcast team, bounces between radio and television depending on where he's needed. Has a voicemail from Bob, which he will treasure forever. Great job tonight, Euchre said with the upbeat tilt known to generations of baseball fans. We'll see you tomorrow. It was the night of October 2nd. The Brewers had just rallied to beat the Mets in Game 2 of the National League Wild Card Series. With an eighth inning home run from 20-year-old Femon Jackson Churio and Garrett Mitchell, Euchre was listening to Levering and Lane Grindle calling a thrilling finish on his car radio on his drive home. Euchre hadn't called a Brewers game for some time, weakened by a myriad of health concerns, including his family revealed on Thursday afternoon after his passing, multi-year battle with small cell cancer, lung cancer. He had come to American Family Field for Game 1 of that series, but was unable to work. Euchre intended to work Game 2, even did his pregame show with the Brewers manager Pat Murphy, but by game time, he was spent. He told Levering, "All right, you got it." Of course, Levering jumped in. All season long, this is how it went. Levering, Grindle, and Josh Mauer reported for duty home games. If Euchre worked, he worked. If he didn't, he didn't. After 54 years of calling games for his hometown team and entertaining generations of baseball fans, he had more than earned that right. So Levering and Grindle called Game 2 against the Mets while Euchre sat in the back of the booth. In the 7th inning, he headed home. But when the Brewers rallied to extend their season during the postgame show, Euchre left Levering that voicemail. "I'm never going to delete that message," Levering said Thursday. After that, I had a feeling he was going to work Game 3. There was no way that he was going to miss that one. And he called another brilliant game. What a gift for Brewers fans it was. Sour ending and all. Jake Bauers and Sal Frelick hit back-to-back homers in the 7th, and the Brewers had the lead with all-star closer Devin Williams on the mound in the 9th with 2 outs to go. Unfortunately, Euchre didn't get to call a victory. Pete Alonso connected for a go-ahead homer, and the Mets won, ending the Brewers season before Euchre made the rounds in the clubhouse afterwards to say goodbye to the players he loved so. He signed off on the air to fans. "I tell you," he said to the Brewers radio network, that one had a little sting to it. And that's the moment I think we all started to know. Knowing everything I've known for the last couple years and how hard it's been for him, it felt like that was his goodbye. You know, you just never know. And we've been in this pattern for a long time, and he's Superman. And he's always found a way to come back from whatever he's fighting. But that one felt different. It was hard. It was tough. But he was still very upbeat when he said goodbye. It felt like that night he was not ready to say goodbye with every sentence that he continued with. It was just trying to prolong his time on the air. As Levering began the postgame show, Euchre sat in his seat and looked at the field. His wife, Judy, always by his side at the ballpark in recent years, walked down to Euchre's seat, put a hand on his shoulder on the air. Jeff Levering's voice crumbled. Eventually, Euchre left his seat and met Grindle in the back of the press box. Grindle extended his hand and prepared to say goodbye, but Euchre said, "I'm not done with you yet. You're with me." Watching Euchre bid farewell to the players down in the clubhouse, Grindle sensed that Euchre knew he'd called his final game. So did the players, including Christian Yelich, who first met Euchre on a private jet alongside franchise icons Robin Yount and Ryan Braun, as the group traveled to the team's fan fest, just days after the Brewers acquired Yelich from the Marlins. Well, now, late January, I knew Bob was going through that battle of some time. Yelich said that's why the last game was emotional as it was. Privately, a few of us knew that was likely the last one we would have Bob be a part of. He's been such a big part of the Brewers and all of our lives. It's kind of hard to process at this time. But even as the emotions flowed more than usual, Euchre still managed to make people laugh. He never lost that ability. That moment he told me about his cancer diagnosis was typical Bob. It was in spring of 2023. We were in commercial break out of our first game, and he turns to me and says, "Oh, I have cancer." Grindle said, "I'm like, what?" And we're back on the air. We do a half inning and go into the next break. I turned to him, "Can you elaborate, please?" Euchre preferred to keep his health concerns private. After he got confirmation of exactly what he was up against, there was times he would do radiation during the day and come straight to the ballpark, Grindle said. Sometimes I wondered, how is he going to do the game tonight? Then the music started, and something out of this world would take a hold of his body, and he would go into broadcaster mode. It was incredible. That guy was a lion, said Levering. There was not a bad day when Bob was at the ballpark. He made you feel that way whether you were listening to him or whether you were in his presence. He made you feel like $1,000,000 and you were the most important thing going on that day. Just being in his presence made you smile. This is the hardest stuff because these are the people that knew him the best and spent the most time with him. I have stories that I will take with me forever about him. Stuff on the air, stuff off the air. But my favorite moments are just sitting around the back of the booth at the table having story time with Bob, weaving generations. I would walk away like I just talked to him about a 20-year-old Jackson Churio, and then immediately he transitions to stories about catching behind Ted Williams. Who else can do that? No one could, because there was no one like Bob. I would say 1960 is when we met, said Brewers founder and MLB Commissioner Emeritus Bud Selig, who was a Milwaukee Braves fan, then a Braves investor before he brought baseball back to Milwaukee in the 70s and placed Euchre on the radio booth in 71. I don't know what to say. He was remarkable. And he made himself into a great announcer. Let's not forget that. He was a great baseball announcer. So I just read a portion. There is quite a bit more. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you guys. Go read this. This sums up like just that feeling and everything, what went into that final call and that final Jeff Levering call that I read and played on the air last week in the Bob Euchre episode. And I appreciate everyone who's viewed that episode. We do these episodes and we talk about this because this is baseball is life to a lot of us. Um, several of the different things. It's fathers and sons. I think we're all a part of this game because we started playing catch in our backyard when we were 5, when we were 6, 4, 3, 2. It starts at a young age, and it's a game that's not hard to fall in love with when you're a kid. And that's changed over time, obviously. It has. But I think that is one of the hardest parts of this is to realize it's a game, and it's sad to see a big piece of our game and our lives walk away. Those nights in the garage, those rides home, day games when you're at work and you sneak the radio on your computer, or you turn it on in your phone, quietly at your desk. That's a part of all of us. All right, so there is an article put out by SI. Moving on from Bob Euchre for a moment, there's an article put out by SI here that's got a couple different interesting suggestions. So there's 3 different moves here. I'm gonna give my take on each one of them. So this is one bold, one realistic, and one boring prediction for the Brewers to finish off the offseason. The bold prediction is Milwaukee signs Alex Bregman if he ends up landing 2 or 3 year deal with opt-outs. So they are saying the Brewers could sign Alex Bregman. That's a bold prediction. Okay, interesting. I'm not opposed. He would obviously more than make up for Willie, so that would be okay. Money would be probably expensive, but probably worthwhile. Realistic, Milwaukee signs veteran reliever Kirby Yates. He's a 2-time All-Star. He logged a 1.17 ERA for the Texas Rangers in 61 appearances. So it could make sense to bring him in because of the loss of Devin. Boring, and Milwaukee doesn't sign another player to a big league deal this offseason. I think that's more than likely what's going to happen. I don't think they're going to sign another big leaguer. But again, time will tell. We'll see. It's January. It's late January. Like I said, Christian Yelich, Lorenzo Cain, same day. That's when you knew they were making a push. And then there's a couple different... Apparently, there's a couple versions of that same article. I had 2 tabs open, and it was the same article. I always gotta laugh when when people recycle content. All right, so there's nothing really new in the Twitter verse today, obviously. Not a lot of baseball is going on at this moment, so I'm not going to cover anything with Twitter tonight. Like I said, I covered the signings, talk about Bob some more. I might dedicate a moment to Bob every time. If you guys want to leave a memory with me and I can share it with the audience, I'd love to do that. I'll leave you with my best Bob Euchre memory, and it's not mine. It's not mine at all. So a couple of years ago, you guys very well know that I was a big On Deck proponent. I loved On Deck. And fortunately, hey, there's not one. I don't think they're bringing it back. They might do another beers at a something or other event, but so I was out and about shooting my video for that particular on deck. And my wife was wandering around with one of our friends. And lo and behold, she comes back to me and I'm like, hey, how, I think she got in line for a different player or something like that. And I was off looking for, I don't know, remember specifically what player I was looking for, but she comes back and she's good. Hey, I just got Bob Uecker and Mark Antonazio. And I'm like, what? So she was around the area where Bob was when she was, happened to see him leaving, and she kind of walked in front of him, asked for a picture real quick, because that's my wife's thing. My wife doesn't do autographs; she does selfies. And she got a photo, and she told me the security was no, because they always have guys in security around them when they're walking through those event floors, especially the Wisconsin Center. And Bob said to her, I've always got time for a pretty girl. And he took a picture with her. It's awesome. It's just absolutely awesome. So that's our Bob Uecker story, not mine, my wife's. And I probably don't even tell it that great. So, but yeah, my wife came back with a photo with the legend upon legends. And I'm sitting here like, oh, I did nothing. I walked around and shot some video. So that's the story. My wife is the selfie queen. So that's all I've got for you guys today. I'd like to thank you again for watching the Miller Park Minute. As always, guys, we will be back. We're going on brief hiatuses here, just with the lack of news. It's hard to consistently produce something every day. So I will do my best to come back to you tomorrow evening. Until then, remember to like, subscribe, share the video. Follow us on all your social platforms, Miller Park Minute, everywhere except for X. We are Miller Minute. So thanks for watching, guys. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you for watching the Miller Park Minute. Go Brewers.